or make sure you guys are on the right talk. We're going to be essentially attacking some features in Office 365 here. Is that working over there? Are we good?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I like to kind of communicate with the audience here. And so I'm a dad, SetKC founder. Anybody from SetKC?
Hey, are you a cop?
Yes, a defender. An offender. I'm the nicest evil guy that you'll know. And I also happen to enjoy.
You said nice or ice?
Nice.
Someone said ice. He said ice. Someone said ice.
I got more than that in my pocket, so you drink that.
No, prove it.
Got a whole bag. Okay, now that we've established yes. So I actually also happen to enjoy having a good time. I also run the DEF CON parties as well as the ICE for DerbyCon. But besides that, I just want you guys to relax. We're gonna go on a little journey here. You don't have to worry. Can you guys hear me okay? I need to eat the mic or anything? Okay. You don't need to take any notes. I'm gonna give you everything here. And as we do that, the too long didn't read portion would definitely be that Microsoft built a C2 and you literally just need a little bit of access. There might be some physical access to a computer, but for the most part, Microsoft built a C2. And I wasn't even going to build a tool for this talk. Like literally in the last week, the scope creep that happens when using Microsoft Flow is pretty much unbelievable. And how many people use Flow? Oh, sweet. Okay. Did you do any hacking with it? Oh, we got one. Okay. So if you want to, you can go ahead and go to flow.microsoft.com because I'm going to show you some settings in there that might be kind of scary for your organization. But you can just sign into flow.microsoft.com and we'll get to that in a bit. So what is Flow? Oh, and I should also preference that I did let Microsoft choose some of my slides images. So they have this feature inside PowerPoint that it will do AI supposedly. And so that's what Microsoft thinks Flow is right here in the yellow. It's not NetFlow. It's not Naughty by Nature. It's not the Geico lady, but or Progressive. Sorry. Yes, thank you. But a little bit about Flow. So it's an automation tool. I would also say that it's more for the business side. It sounds like that they preference this being for the business itself. And they've got a handful of features there, and there's a little robot was selected by Microsoft. But so how did we get here? So I started using Flow for automation. I started looking at things, and figuring out, what could I do with Flow to make someone's job easier? And as I was looking at it, I designed a tool that would take JSON. It would extract data. It would do some OPSEC where it would remove, if you had like a company email, it would remove that before posting it to or looking it up on VirusTotal. Do a bunch of OSENT. If it happens to have like a URL redirect, I would follow that. And that'd start capturing the URL images or the image hashes. And the tool itself would start to show like, hey, this is a phishing email. It was doing it by itself. It's like, hey, we've seen this in URL scan before, or maybe we could post it to MISP or whatnot. And then it would output to a SharePoint site. So I was like, hey, incident response team, I built this thing. And they were literally like, cool.
I love you, Tren.
Let me unpack Flow a little bit, or unrar it, if you have those pirates in here. But it's an automation tool, definitely. It has where if you're going to select a feature, it's either going to be automated, it's going to be an instant flow, or a scheduled task. So you can either, click a button, or maybe you have it some automated where an email comes in and then you'll do blah. Or they also have some features like if you get an email from your boss, it'll send you a text message or pop up on your phone. But there's hundreds and hundreds of integrations inside Flow already built from Microsoft. So I was like, okay, cool, let's check this out. So as I did that, I'm like, okay, well, I want an email that comes in that says it has to do with malware, and then I will post it to Twitter. That seems like a good idea. Your email comes in and then you post it outside the organization. I didn't see any problem with that. So I tried to do that, and literally this message came up, and I was actually shocked. I'm like, when did DLP start catching stuff? and so I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, why did they show me that as an option? I'm like, what's going on here? If those that are following along that have, your Office 365 environment open, if you've already logged into flow.microsoft.com and you click that little gear up there in the top, and you go to the admin center, and we'll go and follow along here. Hopefully you've done that. So my friend in the front here is capturing your passwords. Click on the data policies, click on your policy that you have here, and click on the data groups. So I'm like, okay, following this along, and lo and behold, someone had added a business data only for Outlook. And I'm like, well, I was kind of shocked there. Well, if you put anything that you want to be protected, so only those integrations can talk to one another, would be the Office 365. You want to put up in the business level. And down below would be the, stuff that you don't want it to communicate with. So, I came from the school of try harder, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see what we have here. This, as I was going through all the process and going through all the connectors, I discovered that there was actually there's three, but these are the two primary that you could use to bypass the DLP feature here. So with that being said, when you try to take business data and access a connector data, it gets denied. It just doesn't fit. But that same path here going along would obviously get through. So if you take business data, you put it into one of these two connectors that Microsoft provides, then it's no longer business data. It's like, the type of like, these are not the drones, like Microsoft's like, oh, cool, you can communicate with that. So, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm happy. So let's break this down a little bit further. So as you post a tweet, when we're going to have a message come in, and then I'm going to do an HTTP post to a request. Now, a request to me is it's an interesting thing. So Microsoft allows you to have a request portion where anything that you want to post to Microsoft, they just build you like on the fly a cloud server. So that's what this is. It's my cloud server for my data that just says, here's a link, you can start posting into it. I'm like, okay, so we take the HTTP post, we post it into the request, and then we make that request say, post that onto the internet. Like, oh, okay, well, I didn't get that error this time, so let's put this in practice here. So what we'll be doing here is I have a URL that I want to post, and we will be I'm just refreshing the Twitter account so you can kind of see like there's no new data there. Yeah, I know, it's private. So being that, I just sent the email, and I'm going to just show that the policy is still running. I'm not allowed to, post data to Twitter. Click refresh here. Lo and behold, still the, stupid policy is still there. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and refresh. Bam. We've got data outside. We've exfilled data outside the rules of Microsoft. So it looks sweet. So now, that smile just keeps turning in like this. So I'm thinking like, what else can we do? Can we just, monitor the inbox and start recording things? So just to set the stage here, I have on the left, I have Office 365. On the right, I have the Google Sheets. And what I'm hoping to do is anything that comes into my inbox will land into Google Sheets. So with that being said, I'm going to show you the rules that just to make sure that I'm not cheating and I have the email forwarding outside the company. There's no rules on, no responses or anything of that nature. We'll go ahead and start a new message. I'm just going to send it to myself. People are amazing. They're like, hey, here's my new password. I'll just send it to myself in my inbox. And send here. And just to kind of go through the rest of the path, I wanted to make sure that I could even respond to emails and that would pass through as well. So I'd get the full conversation going back and forth. So as that was happening, I was just posting to Google Sheets their outside API. So lo and behold, yes, we can totally exfil. You can sit inside someone's inbox. So as an attacker, this is really awesome when, like, hey, instant response. Did you check the rules? Like, yep, we're good. Like, did you check flow? Like, no, I never heard of that. So what just happened there? So when a new message comes in, I post it to, our internal request, and it in turn strips out the HTML garbage that's inside the email. I just have it extract that. And then it responds back into that path and composes a new message and posts it out onto the Google Sheets. So another thing I happened to notice was every time I would stand up a new, we'll just say that, that Azure platform, anytime I would stand up like a new request, I would notice that I would get a new IP address for every single one. And I happened to start noticing that sometimes I would configure rules that would fire off every minute. So as I was looking at this stuff, I happened to notice, I'm like, well, we could probably build a botnet. So Microsoft's like, sweet, you gave me a botnet that I can start attacking other organizations with. And so I'd schedule a task. We use one of those that says, hey, fire every 5 seconds or 1 minute. And it would reach out to every single one of those requests that you can build yourself. So as you do that, those are individual random IP addresses that you would use from that environment. And they don't change. They're pretty static. I've had them for 2 or 3 weeks, and I've noticed that they never change. As you pass that data through that request, it will post to the actual victim. So either you're doing like a get or a post to their infrastructure. And as an incident response person, they'll be like, well, we'll just go ahead and block that. And that will probably work out really well for you if you're an Office 365 customer. So it was like 7 years ago I posted this, and it happened to pop up. Yeah, that's me. I change over over time. But 7 years ago I posted this, and I was like, that would be, this actually works for my talk. Well, what if we could build an actual button that could do something? So an honest to God hack button. So I'm going to have to set the stage here because there's going to be a lot of stuff that's about to happen. What we're hoping to do here is drop a file onto a user's desktop. Now, in order to do that, I want to have some complete obfuscation. And by what I'm doing here is I'm going to send like a normal spam message that you might receive in your inbox. But at the same time, I want to hide code in there that Flow will actually parse apart for us, decode the base 64, which turns into a URL. It goes out onto the URL, grabs a payload, takes that payload, drops it onto the box, and then eventually will execute it. So, and I found out that Flow is really nice that you can build a phishing toolkit within Flow. Like you could honestly have a button that you check and say, hey, I want to do a UPS scam. Just pick who you want to send it to, and off it goes. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and so here, this is the paste bin that has the batch script that I'm going to run. So I take the URL, convert it to base 64, and inside Flow, like on your phone, this would be emulating a phone here. So we select the shipping one. I take the base 64 and break it up into each one of those fields and click send. So that should land in the inbox. It looks like a normal email. Doesn't have any malicious links in it. So the user might just say, oh, well, that's nothing, or throw it away or delete it. But meanwhile, Flow is processing it. You can see on the left-hand side, it dropped that batch script, and momentarily, bam, it executed it over the internet. So if you're thinking about this, I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, well, oh, if you open the file, it says hi Derby. But I know what you're thinking. So if I don't use Office 365, I'm safe. But what if I told you I can bring my own Office 365 to your environment? But really, I know what you're really thinking. You're like, how did we get from using Office 365 and now we're dropping code onto individuals' computers? That's probably what you're really thinking. So Microsoft, in its infinite wisdom, they built this thing that has on-premise data. So you can actually install Flow internally to take commands from the internet. So that's how I was able to push a button on my phone and bypass all of your security protocols and drop data onto a host internally. So as a red team or a nation state actor, you're like, this is great. Like, thanks, Microsoft, because if you're looking for unknown data points, you're not going to think that Microsoft's the one that's feeding this data back and forth. So let's talk about my Oceans 1 of heist scene here. So what we ended up doing is we built a button for Flow that we would click on the phone that would take the base 64 of the URL that we had, put it in an email, send it to the user that they would just think that's junk and they would completely ignore, because that's what we're after. We don't want them to be like, hey, this looks fishy, let's send it to abuse. And even if they did, they wouldn't have any idea, because it's just 3 random tags that don't make any sense inside the email itself. So when the parser takes a look at that, it says, hey, I actually know those 3 random tags, because I also left in like 6 or 7 other tags, so they just look like random trash in there. It pulls those all of the tags and then goes through one by one and says, oh, I know that one, I know that one. Takes all 3 of those, combines the full tag together and builds a base 64 encoded blob, and then it says decode, which Flow has that capability built in, which is great. And then it says, hey, this is a URL, let's go get the payload. So as it does the payload, it will grab that, store it in Azure for a moment, and then it's where the real magic starts happening. It says, so Flow has the capability of creating files on the desktop. It can read from your desktop, it just can't execute. So I needed to figure out a way to do that. And I stumbled across someone who actually used Flow to lock their computer if they had forgotten. I mean, that'd be something that if you work with me, I would do some evil things when you're away, like changing your autocorrect to your boss's name to bitch before you hit send. But doing that, what's happening here is, so Flow can create a batch file, and I just need to know where it needs to be on the box. So you can, from the browser, you can actually navigate through someone's inbox from Flow. You can just click, go through the C drive, the Windows. So in this demo, I put it on the desktop itself. So as I was doing that, it's going to write that batch file to the desktop, and then I have, it's looking through an event ID that's occurring. So I actually have a scheduled task that's going through the event ID, and if it sees that event ID, what it's supposed to do is execute a PowerShell script. And inside that PowerShell script, all it's doing is it's looking at a watcher folder. So the reason why I'm doing that is that whenever anything drops into that watching folder that happens to be a text file, then that PowerShell script knows, hey, I'm supposed to run this file on the desktop. So what happened here is that event.id actually fired, and the went through its path of, hey, I'm watching that folder. And the last thing that Flow starts doing is it updates a text file in that watcher folder. And then lo and behold, the PowerShell executes the batch script on the desktop. So naturally, you would design this a little bit different so you wouldn't see any of this. You want to be stealthy as possible, but I just wanted to kind of see that you can execute with Flow. And I don't really know if Microsoft has taken that into consideration. This is just another overview. So like I said, that this tool constantly has a scope creep with me. Whenever I look at it or someone asks me a question, I'm like, yeah, I can totally do that. Yes. Like I really haven't found anything that I can't do with Flow as it pertains to either being a good guy or a bad guy. And so just the other night, I was looking at this. I'm like, oh, I could probably make some sort of like firewall bypass tool with Flow. So I will go ahead and demo this. So what we're going to be doing here is psexec. I'm trying to get psexec. I would go to live sysinternals and get the block page, the OpenDNS. It's like, nope, you're not allowed to get there. So natural hacker person, you'd go, let's go to cache mode, or all your users do that to view inappropriate things at work probably. But so you scroll down, find a psexec, and I will copy the link here. And we'll click it just to show that, nope, you still can't get to it even with cache mode. We will bring up the tool, maybe. Okay, here it goes. Oh, no, we're going to curl the file just so you can show that this Ubuntu box doesn't have like special access. So once again, it's blocked. And now we're going to bring up the tool that I just decided to make this past week. Called Overflow. So in Overflow, we're going to do a download bypass. It's going to say, where do you want to download from? We'll put in that path that we're not allowed to go and give it the file name that we want to call it. So we'll just call it ps.exe, hit enter. And what's happening right now is on Azure's cloud, it's downloaded this inside Microsoft, and then it's responding to those same URL requests that I use for everything else. You can see that psexec actually works, and it's just dumping it to the desktop. So we're just bypassing all of the security functions and then using Azure to download. So probably 100%, 99% of you probably have this open. So as a red team person, try to get like Mimikatz or something like that. This is where you want to go. You could even go as far as you could browse here if you were like that jonesing to look at stuff on the internet. You could probably just download the HTML file and then dump it to your machine locally. So that being said, I've talked about this quite often, that the scope creep that comes with using Microsoft Flow would be, you can download malware in Azure, and then what would actually happen is you can manipulate it before it lands on the desktop. So that's one thing. You can append data to files. So one thing that I was able to do was take a look at like command.exe and just like write some random trash to the end of it. And then so the hash is different. It still executes as normal. But it's also in the Flow service runs as a trusted installer. So, sethkeys.exe, if you've ever done sticky keys, that actually works again. So, I mean, it's literally simple. You tell Flow, hey, go to the desktop, find command.exe, copy that to like bad.com or bad.exe, then remove seth.exe and make bad.exe become Seth, or bad.exe becomes Seth. You hold shift a couple times, bam, you have system. So it's terrible, but Flow is really great. It's a really cool tool. So recently, the other day, someone's like, hey, he might be sitting in the front. He's like, hey, could you do this over an API? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of looked at it, but I didn't see anything. So today, I like to look at flow every day and like make really terrible weapons with it. And I happened to notice that there is an API call. So that's probably something in the future you should probably look at, where you can just request a tool to be built from the outside on somebody else's infrastructure. And to the right, I was just kind of showing the different capabilities. You can rename a file, you can list files in the root and copy and delete things. Windows Defender doesn't like what I've been doing with Flow. I made a mistake and they copied one of my malware files, but whatever. It's so let's review some other problems here. The password resiliency. This is great. So once you've like pwned some individual, so if you just spray passwords and they don't use two-factor and you're able to get into their environment, you can, as long as they're still an Office 365 customer, you're going to always have access to their environment remotely. So you can just issue commands and just do whatever you want. It's also two-factor resistant. So the account that I've been demoing you with, it's actually has two-factor on. So I compromised the account first, and then after the fact, 10 years later, everyone's like, we should use two-factor. It'll stop with phishing. So that was enabled after the fact, but it doesn't matter anymore because all the API calls are coming from Azure, and Azure's able to doesn't need two-factor to run. So Microsoft, you could look at that. So it is an alternate command and control. The majority of the data runs on 443 to Microsoft as the C2. And if you're not like a big business that has like an E3 or whatever, the other ironic thing is it will say, Clippy will pop up and it's like, oh, well, you want to try 30 days? Boop. So you'll have 30 days to exfil. So as a nation state attacker, this would probably be a good, foothold that you'll have for a while. And also keep in mind you don't just have to run batch files. You could, run an interpreter script from the internet from your phone and have it launch and all that other great stuff. There's also, so there is a time from time that if you write a crappy rule or a flow function, it will send the user an email. They'll probably not pay attention to that anyway because it's just junk. But you can write a rule to have that forwarded to your account, and then you click on the link that says unsubscribe, so they stop getting those. Let's see. It's not very easy to get rid of Flow. Flow, I would assume, is something like Internet Explorer. It's like ingrained into Office 365. They do have a DLP fix for the HTTP and those request data hooks, but the problem with that, it is so convoluted. It is like probably Martha Stewart's shopping list from Christmas and Thanksgiving put together. And it's just a nightmare to read. If I was the admin for Office 365, I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna just wait. I'll just put in a request that say, hey, pull these two things, make it easy, and we'll move on. So if you're a blue team in this room, I would definitely see, hey, do we have any nation state attackers in here? Yes, yeah, that's true. I would hunt for the Microsoft Power BI Enterprise EXE, and thank you. So some of the things that I did add in this tool that I just released would be that you can spy on the user's inbox, meaning there's a feature so you can see, are they reading their inbox? So you can get an idea of when they're checking their inbox. You can also see what's being sent. You can delete things. You can do the download bypass. Also, I have a shell dump, so it shows you like where in the computer you're currently nested. So, any questions? How many of you have a data policy that checked your flow? Anyone? That's what I thought. Okay.
If you were Microsoft and you were trying to fix so this couldn't work, what would you do?
I would pull those two, the HTTP requests into those connectors so you don't have to jump through hoops. Just make it really easy. If they had those in the below data where I had business data, this wouldn't be a problem, but it's kind of scary. Yeah. Oh, hey. Mhm. You download this talk and you send it to them. But to be honestly, there's oh, sorry. The question was, how would you approach the C levels to make fixes like this in Office 365? So just so you're aware, there's I'm currently at 13 different URLs that you need to use to respond to incidents inside Office 365. So they can like, hey, C level, take a look at that. You need to have a good data policy. You need to figure out what you're putting out there. Yes, so the Graph API makes it even a little bit more interesting is that you can use Flow to start making calls inside the corporation. So depending on the type of access that you have. So the tool that I built where we're dumping the email, you can actually do that with the Flow Graph API. I just haven't had time to explore that, but yeah, that's why I'm just saying this is the gift that keeps on giving. It's going to be a nightmare unless Microsoft, make some changes. Yes, I will. As soon as I'll put the slides will be in there. Well, thank you. Because it sounds terrible. I'll sit in your lap and do that. Can I have the microphone?